All right, welcome back, everybody. Here is the next part of finishing up your pinch bowl. We're going to clean up and trim the attached coil foot that we attached last time. I'm going to make sure that the clay, first of all, has to be nice and leather hard. This should be kind of a consistency of when you use the tool, the clay will flake off, but there's still a little bit of tackiness to it, so it will stick to the surface of your bowl if you don't clean it up. If it's too soft, it's probably going to smear around too much. If it's too dry, it's probably going to crumble off the surface of your pinch bowl. So right now, I started with one of the other tools, and it was just a cleanup tool, and I didn't really like the way that it was kind of wiping away the clay. So I went to a different tool that you have access to, which is a loop tool with a flat side on one side and a round loop on the other side. And I'm working just around the inside edge of that connection area, and I'm just kind of evening out my foot as much as I can, as possible. I want to make sure the wall looks about as even as possible all the way around the circular part of the foot. And then I'm going to switch over to kind of working on just the top edge of the foot, the part that's actually going to rest against the table. And I'm going to just, like I said before, I'm going to have a little bit of a similarity to the bottom as it is with the lip. So I've shaved off just a little bit of an angle on my foot, kind of slopes to the side a little bit and then comes to a little bit of a point on that top edge where it would rest. Once it's flipped over, it would rest on top of the table. Now I'm just cleaning up a little bit like nice and carefully around the inside edge of the foot and trying to create a nice flat wall instead of having what used to look like a nice kind of a round tube that was attached to the bottom, almost like a donut shape. We're trying to get rid of that and trying to make something that look a little bit more like a traditional foot. If you look at the two bowls above the one that I'm working on, those are ones that have been finished and also carved, and that's the next step that we're going to go to after we finish cleaning up our foot. So now I'm just establishing a new edge on the inside of the foot and creating something that looks very similar to what the rim looks like on the other side of the bowl, on the top edge of the bowl. So there's a little bit of continuity and some elements being repeated throughout the actual form, and just going to take my time and make sure that the clay is staying as even as possible, the actual thickness of the foot as even as possible as I trim. I'm doing this very lightly, and it's starting to flake off really well, so it's just the right consistency that I'm looking for. And then once I feel like I've got that foot evened out completely, I can take the back edge of my rib, the straight edge of my rib, and just very gently kind of slide it across the top surface and kind of reestablish a nice even wall thickness without any kind of carving marks or any kind of bumps that might come into play later and cause the foot to lay on the table unevenly. So just a straight edge, just that flat straight edge, and then I can kind of clean things up after that with my hand. I'm going to check the balance. It looks like it's pretty level, but it could use a little bit more work. And so I'll work on that after I clean up a little bit of the rim, because the rim, it's been resting on its rim for quite a while now, and it's taken a couple dings and dents, and I'm just cleaning it up and making sure that it stays nice and smooth. I decided that I wanted to try to see if I could make a little bit of an undercut with this other tool and draw this basically just a little bit of a line in between the foot and the base of the bowl. Usually I do that when I trim something on the wheel, just as a way for the glaze to catch before it runs down the side of my foot. But doing this by hand, it's a little bit of a different technique, and I'm not quite used to it. So I don't know if I liked it, so I decided I'm going to probably change it up a little bit later. I'm going to look at it for a little bit, and then I don't know if I really was quite happy with the way it looked. So while you're doing this, you can change your mind. You can do different things, and you can experiment as long as you don't remove too much of the clay as you're doing it, so that you have some backup or you have some extra clay to work with a little bit later if you want to change things around. But you got to be careful. You don't want to remove too much clay too quickly, and all of a sudden realize that you've gone way too far and you've gotten your foot trimmed up to almost so it's not there anymore. And then that's going to be a major problem. So you got to make sure that you're careful and take your time. Don't want to remove too much clay too quickly, because it's hard to come back from that. You might have to start all over again, and this is not the time that you really want to start all over again on your foot. So now I'm just wiping things clean with a damp sponge and then using my thumb to compress the clay back together. And then I'm looking at the inside transition, trying one of these other tools. Worked all right, but I think it wasn't quite exactly what I was looking for. And then as I continue to work, I've noticed that I'm not too much of a fan of that transition, so I'm going to get rid of it again with the flat loop tool. And now I'm just really carefully just shaving off just that little bit of clay that I didn't need anymore. Gonna clean off my area and then check the base again. This is a good little technique where you slide it around on the table so you can see what's hitting. And if you keep doing this, you'll start to level everything out on the bottom of your bowl so that it doesn't rock and change and shift and kind of get a little uneven on the base. So once I've done that, then I'm just going to wipe it clean and then smooth it out again with my fingers. And then I'm going to start planning out my design for my surface. I'm going to start dividing my bowl into kind of half and then into quadrants of 4. And then I'll divide those again. And I'm just taking a pencil very lightly to draw onto the surface. If the pencil is pretty sharp, it might cut into the clay a little bit more than you expect. So working with a dull pencil might be the best choice. And you can literally draw some pencil lines onto the clay. And then if you don't like them, you can carefully wipe them clean, or you might have to scrape them down a little bit and then wipe it clean and smooth it out again if you want to start over with your lines. But for the most part, you can draw most of the design into the surface before you start carving, like the ones that you see, the 2 bowls that you see above the one that I'm working on right now. Both of those have been basically planned out the same way I planned this one out, and then I decided on 2 different types of designs, one going vertically and one going horizontally across the surface. And so now this is just kind of getting a start on where I want to go with my design and what I want to do with my carving next. Just going to readjust a couple things here and there and then start planning for the rest of it. All right, thanks.